Well, without further ado, I'm very pleased to be able to introduce you to Dom Pates, who's the Senior Educational Technologist at City St George's University London, looking at working together for change. So, Dom, it's all over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm Dom. I'm a senior educational technologist at City St George's, as Chris has just described, and I was a Jisc community champion in 2025. So this is my first Connect More. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Just going to set my own timer so I know that I don't overrun on this. Um, Thank you very much for choosing to come and spend some time with me this morning. I'm very grateful for your ears. How do we educate our young people for graduating into a world with a rapidly changing climate? Uh, I'm going to be looking at how we've responded at City St George's to that prompt. Excuse me, through a project that we've referred to internally as Working Together for Change. I'll unpack that a bit as we go. First, I'll start with an overview of the project, which is an interdisciplinary undergraduate module on sustainability and climate change. We'll then take a brief look at the bigger picture context. I'll break down the different parts of the module, and I'll cover our approaches to learning design. I'll then talk a bit about the module's impact, and we'll end with some key personal takeaways and some time for questions. So, there we go. So let me introduce you to the module that we've developed at City St George's, which I think serves as a useful model for undergraduate climate and sustainability education. It's not the first example of something like this. It's not the only example, but it's what we've developed at City St George's. So LU 2037, which is our module code, is a year 2, term 2 elective module that was introduced into our undergraduate law degree in January 2025. It's titled Sustainability and Climate Change, which is a simple description that should be clear what it means on a degree transcript. Tempted to go much more sort of activist in the title, but let's go for something quite simple then. When we first had the idea for this, there was no logical home for such an initiative. But the City Law School provided some space for it in their undergraduate curricula. We're very grateful to them for that. It's taught by academics from across the university, and it balances live and pre-recorded components. Now, we've just completed the second iteration of the module, which saw students from several other schools join the cohort as well. Now, I'm the founder of the module, and it is led by Dr. Jed Odermatt, who you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen. He is an academic in the City Law School. Key topics are taught by academics from across City St George's, including in disciplines such as engineering, English, business, economics, politics, psychology, and food policy. We also have a network of support for the module in a variety of areas from across our professional services staff, which includes digital education, academic skills, careers, and our diversity and inclusion office. This infographic provides an overview of the journey that our learners will take through the module on a week-by-week basis. It shows the different layers or tracks that they are expected or encouraged to participate in. Topics, which you'll see the numbered lines at the top. This provides a broad overview of different disciplinary perspectives on sustainability and climate change issues. And we aim here for the sort of bigger picture breadth rather than the depth that students might get in their own disciplines. In the tutorials track, students are placed in a mixed group from the beginning of the session and given a project from an external organization that has a sustainability challenge. The tutorials are designed to give students the employability skills to help them to respond to that challenge. And we also offer extracurricular experiences and ongoing scaffolded support throughout the module. So, um, why did we create this module, and what is the need for such a thing? So I'm going to start unpacking that a bit with a bigger picture, and then I'll zoom in on my personal motivations for founding it. The 2015 Paris Agreement, which commits now 194 countries to limiting the rise in global surface temperatures to well below 2 degrees C, above pre-industrial levels, commits all parties to cooperating on taking measures to enhance climate change education. I was quite pleased and surprised to rediscover this recently, going back to the Paris Agreement. Um, 7 years on from Paris, UNESCO developed the Berlin Declaration on Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD as I'll use for short. This declaration defined ESD as enabling learners to develop their cognitive and non-cognitive skills in this area, and to empower them to take responsible action as citizens. In 2020, there was a Higher Education Policy Institute debate paper that was produced, and this called for universities to refocus the educational mission of the institution around supporting students to develop their emotional, their intellectual, and their practical capacities to live well with each other and the planet in an era of climate change. So there's another kind of a brick in the wall that we were trying to build here, the need for such a thing. Finally, just looking back a couple of years ago, there was a group of leading climate scientists in 2024 that sort of restating the nature of this as a global emergency and calling for climate change instruction to be integrated into secondary and higher education curriculums worldwide. So I think it's quite clear that there's a big demand for something along this sort of line. My personal motivation for doing this was twofold. During the COVID pandemic, I found myself becoming increasingly troubled by what I saw people doing to the natural world, and it sort of tipped me over into wanting to take action myself. I'm a bit of a reluctant activist at times, but this COVID kind of radicalized me in this area. And shortly after that, I was approached by our university sustainability team. We had in the People and Planet League table, which kind of does green rankings for universities. We were doing relatively well, but um, where our sustainability in the curriculum measures were coming, we weren't doing particularly well at all. And the sustainability team asked if I had any particular ideas on this. So put these two drivers together. What is my climate action? How do I do something here? What's the suggestion? The American oceanographer Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson has a very useful tool for helping people to find their climate action with this very simple Venn diagram that you'll see on the slide here. The diagram asks three things. What are you good at? What work needs doing? And what brings you joy? It's be quite familiar to any of you who are well known with the Japanese notion of ikigai. The intersection between these three circles is where you find your climate action. And I found mine when I realized that I could bring people together from across our institution for a broad-ranging curricular offer that would be aimed at transforming minds and empowering our learners. In the next section, I'll unpack the different parts of the module a little. So consistent support throughout this is key for asking students to think big and to challenge their existing perceptions. When students first log into the module on Moodle, they'll find an orientation section, and this helps to ground them in what to expect from it. We provide necessary information on things like the nature of the assessment and what the teaching schedule is. That can be found here. We've also introduced a glossary of useful terms, a section on careers. We're trying to cultivate the mindset that all careers can effectively be green careers, and a focus on the digital skills that will help them to succeed, particularly with the assessment. For the lecture track or topics, the learning opportunities are spread across pre-recorded materials such as videos and in-person interactive lectures. We start by giving them an introduction to looking at sustainability and climate change from an interdisciplinary perspective. We then take a look at energy and technology, how we tell stories about the climate crisis and business and economic perspectives. We also cover law and global governance, ethics, politics and psychology, and we end with some systems lenses, food systems specifically, and systems thinking more broadly. Students are put into project groups from an early stage, as I mentioned, and they're supported in that project through a series of tutorials. They work on a sustainability challenge that is set by an external organization. These come from a variety of different sectors. As you see on the screen, from education and youth work through to law and order, fire alarm systems even. Students work on a sustainability challenge that is set, as I just described, repeating myself there. The tutorials cover team formation, research and planning, problem solving, thinking in systems, and communication and peer evaluation. Finally, the experiences track is an extracurricular offer, and this is for students that want to take their learning further. Experiences here includes virtual field trips using VR, a games workshop, and some volunteering opportunities. We also encourage students to participate in the annual London Student Sustainability Conference and to consider submitting their work for the following year. I'm going to talk a little about the learning design approaches that we've taken in the next section. Now, there are a collection of design principles that we brought to this module, both as recommended from the literature on ESD and from drawing on our own experience of running a learning design service at City St George's. Alongside interdisciplinarity and ESD, we draw on blended and flipped learning approaches. It's been important to look at authentic and group-based approaches to assessment, particularly as the group project is intended to simulate a workplace context. And we've also looked to co-design with both staff and students, as well as providing extracurricular opportunities for going beyond the curriculum. For our design methods, we build from the idea of constructive alignment, where we began with the intended learning outcomes and worked our way backwards from there. There are two parts to the assessments, a group project and an individual reflective report on the experience, both counting for 50% of the module's final grade. For the group project, students work together to produce a digital artifact of their choosing, which could be a video, a podcast, or a poster, in response to the sustainability challenge that's set for them. And we also deploy storyboarding to build up the component parts of each topic and how they interconnect. For the second iteration of the module, which is just complete, we introduced two key design enhancements. The first was a set of framing questions as prompts for each topic. The overarching main question was, what needs to change for people and planet to thrive together? Each topic would then have their own framing question, and I've provided a few more examples on this slide. And we also introduced a consistent teaching pattern that we call the SEER model. This is a way of providing some additional wrapping to the flipped learning materials. So there's a pre-sessional quiz that would survey what they already knew and a reflection prompt at the end of the topic. We deployed several different approaches to co-design. These included consultation from senior leaders, senior academic leaders, and a student survey when making the case of the module. We've had a coalition of the willing working group and 2 workshops with both staff and students together, and a network of professional service partners from across the university to help with the delivery. This has meant that the module has served as an interesting exercise in modeling effective practice for different forms of multi-stakeholder collaboration. Let's end with a look at the module's impact, both on the students and within the institution. In 2024, we were the recipients of a Teaching and Research Award from the University of London Centre for Online and Distance Education. This allowed us to research the impact of aspects such as the authentic nature of the assessment, the experience of working in groups, and the impact of choice in output. We conducted a series of interviews with students on the first cohort. One told us how surprising it was to be exposed to the breadth of different ways of thinking about climate change, which was also helpful for their project. For another, they suggested that the experience of the module had made them think differently about their career choices. One student told us of how much they felt they benefited from learning as part of a group, which is a nice bit of zygotian zone of proximal development for us there. Of course, students also, another one spoke of how much they appreciated being given a choice in their assessment format too. Now, of course, students also experience real challenges in getting through the module too. This is not an easy one to take, and the interviews do also reflect this. We plan to conduct further interviews with the second cohort once the assessments are out of the way, and aim to publish our findings when we're done. For the virtual field trips, students either visited a rainforest in Borneo and learnt about deforestation, or a possible European future where all pollinating insects have gone extinct. As dystopian as that might sound, students found these VR sessions fun and informative, engaging, and in some ways easier to learn from than with other methods. Importantly for VR, they also described the empathy that they felt within the VR experience, and they described them as leaving an emotional impact on them. Although the module is titled Sustainability and Climate Change, it's essentially an employability module too, and is included in the university's Career Activation Pathway programme. We were delighted in 2025 to be shortlisted for a Green Careers Award with the Association of Graduate Careers Advisory Services. For the 25-26 academic year, the university also included the module in a new collection of modules intended to expand interdisciplinary study. This led to a 45% increase in enrolments on the module, which was great to see. The ongoing growth of the module is featured in the university's main sustainability strategy too. But the most impactful thing for me, I think, has been to read the students' reflective reports, which have shown that the module has been transformative for them in many ways. And this is very much what we were aiming for with this in the first place. So I've got 3 takeaways that I've come to learn from my involvement with this project. The first is the importance of taking action. I mentioned earlier I'm a little bit of a reluctant activist in some ways, but this showed me that there are many different ways of taking action. The second, I think, is the value of thinking big. When the idea for this module was first introduced, I was told by so many people that whatever the value of the idea, it wouldn't be possible in a place like ours. It turned out that with persistence and with the right allies, it was possible after all. And this is where my final takeaway came in. The module has been a success due to multiple different people from different parts of the institution buying into it and all playing their part. And this was achieved via the building of rather a lot of bridges. So I'll end there. Thank you very much for listening today, and I'll pass over to Chris for any questions that we have.
Thank you so much, Dom. Right. So we have a few minutes left for questions. I don't think we've got anything in there at the moment. So while people are thinking about perhaps their own reflections about this, and if you just got reflections, you could put them in the chat. It might be interesting to hear perhaps what activities are going on at your organizations around this sort of thing, what sort of things you're involved in. But oh, hang on, we have a question. Right, yeah. Rachel was asking a question, which actually was one on my list, which was when it came to those building bridges, was it easy to convince faculties to get involved with this work?
In a way, I started with those that were already bought into the idea of something like this, but hadn't quite found the vehicle. So, I wanted to represent the entire university. So finding one person in each school that was already bought into this idea and might be doing something in their own programs, their own disciplines, but wasn't part of something much bigger. So I started there. It's less difficult to find one person in each school than it is in general. And once we've got the proof of concept done, we got it approved at a committee, and we started to get the ideas together for it. Then there was more interest developed in it as well. But it's a complex thing for academics to sign up for and agree to.
Thanks, Tom. Elaine's asked, can you give some examples of the kinds of sustainability challenges the students were working on?
Yeah, so see if I can go back to that particular slide. Um, think where I find it. So a really interesting one that has surprised me this year around is we had a submission from a local police force. I wouldn't usually have any association with the notion of the police and sustainability, but this was somebody from who was a sustainability officer within a police force, and I found that their officers generally paid no attention to this sort of thing. They're busy with the rigorous nature of police work, and they don't have time to think about recycling or whatever it might be. So her particular challenge was, how do I get police officers to even think about these sorts of issues? So having the broad range of perspectives helped our students to dig into things like, well, the understanding the nature of police work was one thing, but getting into the psychology of what makes people even motivated to care about this stuff was very useful for them. We found some internal ones as well, so not to draw too regularly on the sort of recycling example, but in university catering, how do we deal with the fact that there's a turnover of disposable objects, and we want to encourage more sustainable practices within the institution for that. We've had lots of other organizations there as well. So there was one, I think we were working with Lawyers Are Responsible. We were a sort of campaigning group. There was another communications organization working around the idea of things like public information campaigns around transitioning away from fossil fuels as well. So we're really we'll work with these external organizations to help them to shape the challenge, because obviously these are second year students and they're going through a challenging experience themselves. But really, it's kind of very, very broad. I mean, I'm of the view that everybody has a sustainability challenge of some sort.
I'd like to exercise chair's privilege and ask a question of my own. Um, uh, Based on that kind of the last point there, and the thing that you mentioned about sort of all careers potentially can be green careers, and obviously you have a career in professional services within an organization as a sort of senior learning technologist. I'm just kind of wonder, um, how does that kind of your approach to environmental sustainability, how does that influence the choices that you make when you're looking at your own practice? But also when you're working with other people as well, when you're sort of advocating for the use of technology to enhance learning. How do you find it shapes that?
Yeah, I mean, this initiative has become the kind of the key front window to that sort of work within the institution. But when I started it, it was a conversation that nobody was really having within digital education itself. We'd been talking about accessibility for several years because we had to. The legislation meant that we had no choice but to think more accessibly within our digital, with the digital tools that we used. Um, Generative AI, the sort of rush to online during COVID, these are things that we were, external factors that as a professional service we were forced to engage with and embrace and adopt and challenge and contest and advise our academic colleagues on. The wider sustainability side, the climate issues around the virtual learning environment or a lecture capture system, nobody was really tackling that. So this gave me an opportunity just to try and start a conversation with my peers and colleagues and say, yeah, well, there is a carbon implication of these tools that we're all using. And I don't really know where we start with this. What is the intersection between digital education and climate change? But I decided to step out of the parapet and say, let's start talking about this because, to my point earlier, Chris, all jobs are green jobs. I wanted to start making my job a green job as well, rather than getting
Mm.
employed as a forestry officer or something like that, rethinking my work. It's like, why don't I reconfigure my work towards this?
Excellent.
Hope that
Thank
answers the
you.
question.
It does. Yeah, enormously. And something that we've been thinking about quite a lot at Jisc, actually. And if anybody's interested in getting involved anymore, I'm just going to do a bit of a pitch for particularly people in sort of the FE and skills sector. They're interested in digital sustainability. Then we have a community with a very active newsletter that is worth engaging with on that. And yeah, something personally I would love to see us having more discussions about at events like this and DigiFest, and just kind of generally kind of what's the role of digital technology, of us digital technologists and educational technologists when it comes to sustainability and environmental responsibility. Dom, thank you so much for bringing us this example of your excellent work.